Every morning, my old hen laid strange little balls instead of eggs, hard, metallic, and warm to the touch. At first, I thought she was sick or cursed, until the day one of those balls cracked open in my hands, and inside, glinting like frozen lightning, was something that would make my son and me richer than anyone in this valley had ever dreamed. I never expected much from the farm. It was a place abandoned by time, tucked so far from the main road that delivery trucks refused to drive up the hill. The roof sagged, the barn leaned like a tired drunk, and the soil was thin and stubborn. When my son Ethan and I moved in after my father died, the place felt more like a final refuge than a new beginning. We didn't come here to thrive. We came because we had nowhere else left to run. But sometimes, the quietest corners of the world hide the strangest miracles. The chicken coop was one of the first things I repaired when we moved in. Ethan insisted on keeping the hens my father left behind, saying they looked lonely. Most were half feral and old enough to remember better decades. But one hen, brown, scarred, with a limp, seemed to follow me everywhere. Ethan named her Maggie. I didn't question it. A boy needs company. Every morning, before the sun stretched over the fields, I walked to the coop and collected whatever eggs hadn't frozen overnight. But the first morning I saw the strange little ball, I thought I had stepped into someone else's life. It wasn't an egg, not even close. It was no bigger than a plum, smooth as riverstone, but faintly metallic, with tiny grooves carved around its surface. When I touched it, warmth pulsed through it like a heartbeat. I dropped it reflexively. "What the?" I muttered. Maggie clucked proudly, as if she'd laid a golden treasure. Ethan appeared beside me, rubbing his eyes, hair sticking up. "Dad, did Maggie lay something?" he asked. I hid the ball behind my back. "Just an odd egg," I lied. But even then, I knew eggs don't hum softly like a machine waking up. For the rest of the day, the ball sat on the kitchen table, wrapped in a towel. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone might come looking for it, though that made no sense. Whoever would search for something so bizarre? I rotated it, examined it in the light, tapped it gently. It never cracked, never dented, never cooled. Ethan kept trying to peek, but I told him it was grown-up stuff. I regretted that immediately. Secrets had poisoned this farm once before. I didn't want to repeat my father's mistakes, but I also needed to understand this thing before involving him. The next morning, Maggie laid another one. I froze. Ethan didn't. He cheered. "She's magic," he yelled. "She's not magic," I said too quickly. "She's just sick." But that wasn't true. Maggie looked healthy, healthier than she had in months. Her limp even seemed better. I gathered the second ball and placed it beside the first. Identical. Same grooves, same warm pulse, same impossible weight that didn't match its size. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "are we gonna die?" Kids have a terrifying ability to jump straight to apocalypse. I ruffled his hair. "Not today," I said. But inside, I wasn't so sure. By the end of the week, we had 7 of them. 7 strange metallic eggs, each one humming faintly, almost musically, when placed near the others. Ethan swore he heard them talking. I pretended I didn't. At night, when the wind howled across the empty fields, I found myself staring at the closed drawer where I kept the balls locked away. Something about them felt ancient yet engineered, like they didn't belong to this world or this time. I wondered whether my father had known, if this was the reason he left the farm to me, or the reason he feared it. My father had been a complicated man, rough, unpredictable, wounded by secrets he never shared. When he died, he left no explanation. No instructions, only a dusty key and the deed. I'd assumed the farm was just land, soil, memories. Now I questioned everything. Why did he isolate himself here? Why did he never leave the property? Why did he warn me, in his last incoherent ramblings, don't ignore the signs? At the time, I chalked it up to dementia or guilt. But the balls, they felt like signs carved in metal, signs waiting to be understood. Ethan was the one who convinced me to investigate further. Kids don't fear the unknown the way adults do. Adults have felt too many losses. But Ethan walked into mystery with curious eyes. "Dad," he said one morning, "maybe they're supposed to open." I avoided the thought deliberately. If they were supposed to open, what would come out? "They're not toys," I warned. "Then why do they hum?" he asked. I had no answer. Kids are born with sharp questions. The world dulls them later. His question lingered long after he ran off to chase Maggie through the yard. Later that day, I found him stacking the balls in the living room while Maggie wandered calmly nearby. "Ethan, I told you not to touch them." He froze mid-stack, caught like a guilty cat. "But look," he said, pointing. The balls lit up, each one faintly glowing from within. A pale bluish light seeped through the grooves, pulsing in synchronized patterns, like they were communicating, or charging, or waking. My breath locked in my chest. "Step back," I whispered. He obeyed. Maggie hopped closer, clucking with approval. The balls arranged themselves, yes, moved, until they formed a perfect circle. The glow faded. Silence settled. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "did they just move?" I nodded slowly. "We're not touching them again," I said. "Not until I know what they are." I placed them back into the drawer gently, even though my hands shook. That night, I barricaded the drawer with furniture. But fear has a strange way of blooming in darkness. I woke up 3 times to check if they were still there. They were. Still. Cold. Lifeless. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was all in my imagination, until Maggie screamed. It was midnight when her cry shattered the quiet. A sharp, panicked cluck, the sound of real fear, not hunger. I grabbed a flashlight and ran to the coop. Something rustled behind the wooden slats. Maggie was pacing wildly, feathers puffed, eyes wide. The other hens huddled in the corner, trembling. I scanned the coop. Nothing moved. Nothing lurked. "It's okay, girl," I whispered. She calmed only when I picked her up and carried her back to the house. Ethan stumbled out of his room, sleepy and scared. "Is Maggie all right?" he asked. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. The next morning, there was another ball in her nesting box. Unlike the others, this one wasn't metallic gray. It was silver, polished, reflective enough to catch my distorted face in its surface. And instead of faint grooves, it had a clear engraved pattern, like constellations. I backed away. "No," I muttered. "This isn't normal. This is impossible." Ethan peeked over my shoulder. "It's pretty," he said. "Kids always see beauty first." I saw danger. And yet, I picked it up. It hummed louder than the others, almost singing. And then, just for a heartbeat, it glowed in my hand. That was the moment I knew I needed help. Not from the sheriff. He'd think I was drunk. Not from a vet. They treated animals. Not whatever this was. I needed someone who understood the land, the strange, the unexplainable. And there was only one person who fit that description. Old Man Crawley. He lived 2 miles down the valley, in a cabin twisted by storms and stories. Locals whispered that he saw things. I dismissed him as a drunk with too many campfire tales. But now, I wasn't so sure. Ethan begged to come along. I told him no. I walked the dirt road alone, carrying the silver ball wrapped in a cloth. The wind hissed across the fields, bending tall grass as if the land itself disapproved of my journey. Crawley's cabin appeared through the fog, small windows covered in newspaper, wind chimes made of bones clattering softly. He opened the door before I even knocked. "You finally came," he rasped. My blood ran cold. "How did you know?" Crawley pointed to the cloth bundle in my hands. "Because it started again." His voice didn't tremble. "Show me," he demanded. And somehow I did. He unfolded the cloth with slow, careful fingers. When he saw the ball, he didn't react with surprise, only with dread. "Not good," he murmured. "Not good at all." "What is it?" I asked. "Something old," he said. "Something waiting." I stepped back. "Waiting for what?" Crawley lifted the ball and held it to the light. "To be woken," he whispered. "To be found. To be claimed." I swallowed. "By who?" Crawley's gaze met mine, and I saw fear there, fear buried deep. "By whoever planted them in this soil generations ago." The words made my stomach twist. "I don't understand," I said. Crawley pointed toward my land. "Your farm sits on ground older than any map. There were stories, strange lights, humming stones, metal seeds that never rusted. People ignored them. Farmers died poor, never knowing what slept beneath their fields." He nodded at the ball. "This one is awake, and if she's laying them..." He trailed off. "She?" I asked. "That hen of yours. Animals sense things before we do. Whatever lies in your soil, it's speaking through her." A chill wrapped around me like icy fingers. The world suddenly felt much larger and much stranger. "What do I do?" I asked. Crawley studied me with cloudy eyes. "You protect your boy. That's first." I nodded. "Always." "Second," he said, "you don't destroy the balls. They're worth more than gold." I frowned. "Worth how much?" Crawley smiled weakly. "If I'm right, enough to buy every farm in this valley twice over." My pulse surged. "You're telling me these things are valuable?" "More than you can imagine," he whispered, "but dangerous too." I didn't ask how something could be both. I already knew. Anything powerful is dangerous. Anything unknown even more so. Crawley wrapped the ball tightly and handed it back. "Take it home. But don't tell the boy everything yet. Curiosity and power make a deadly mix." I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. When I reached the farm, Ethan ran toward me, breathless. "Dad, you have to see this." Fear shot through me. "What happened?" He grabbed my hand and pulled me to the barn. Inside, the 7 original balls were floating several inches above the wooden floor, spinning slowly in a perfect circle. Maggie stood in the center, calm as a queen. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "I think she's doing it." I stared, breath locked in my chest. The balls rotated gently, glowing faintly, emitting a low hum that resonated through the barn beams. "Ethan, stay back," I ordered, voice trembling. "But she's not scared," he said, pointing at Maggie. I wasn't comforted. The balls slowed, then dropped softly onto the floor, rolling into a neat line like obedient soldiers returning to formation. Maggie hopped down, strutted once, and pecked my boot impatiently, like she was telling me to get on with it. I didn't know whether to laugh or run. The farm suddenly felt alive in a way that wasn't natural. That night, after Ethan slept, I sat at the kitchen table with all 8 balls lined up before me, the 7 gray ones and the gleaming silver one. They pulsed gently, like a heartbeat beneath metal skin. Crawley's words echoed in my head. "Something old. something waiting, something valuable. My father's final letter returned to my thoughts too. The parts that made no sense then, but made too much sense now. I tried to protect you from the truth, he'd written. And now the truth sat glowing on my table, waiting, calling, changing everything. And somehow I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, elbows on the table, staring at those humming little worlds lined up in front of me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face, thin, tired, hopeful. Our bank account was a joke, the truck was dying, the house needed more repairs than I could afford. And here, right in front of me, were 8 impossible chances. I'd spent my whole life scraping by, taking whatever the world threw at me. For the first time, I felt like the world had put something down and said, "Your move." At dawn, Ethan padded into the kitchen, hair messy, pajamas twisted. He saw the balls still on the table and smiled like it was Christmas. "You didn't put them away," he said. There was relief in his voice. "Wanted to keep an eye on them," I said. "And they on you," he replied, completely serious. Kids say things that sound like nonsense until they turn out to be prophecy. "We're going to be okay, right, Dad?" he asked. I didn't lie. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I think we have a chance." That word felt dangerous and holy at once. I knew I had to understand what we were dealing with before greed or fear ate us alive. So I did the one thing I swore I'd never do again. I went looking for answers outside the farm. I wrapped one of the gray balls in cloth, left the others hidden in a metal toolbox under the floorboards, and told Ethan not to touch them no matter what. "What if they do something?" he asked. "Then you come get me," I said. He nodded, jaw set. I could see the conflict in his eyes. Curiosity versus trust. Trust won, barely. At the town library, the ball felt like contraband in my jacket pocket. The building smelled of dust and old paper, a comforting kind of age compared to the alien weight pressing against my ribs. I used the public computer, fingers clumsy over the keyboard. I searched everything I could think of. Metallic eggs, hen-laying metal, mysterious metal spheres, humming orbs. Most results were urban legends, conspiracy forums, blurry photos of hoaxes. Nothing matched. The closest thing was an article about rare meteorite alloys, dense, strangely warm, highly conductive, insanely valuable. My pulse quickened. Space rocks? Really? On my way out, I passed Miss Harper, the librarian, a thin woman with sharp eyes. "You look like a man who just read the end of the world," she said lightly. I forced a smile. "Just behind on bills." She shrugged. "That's everyone." As I turned to leave, she added, "You know, your father used to check out books on geology, unusual minerals, meteorites." I froze. "Did he ever say why?" "Not to me," she said. "But he was obsessed. Once told me this land was built on something not of this earth. I thought he was drunk. So had I. On the walk home, the wind felt charged. Meteorites, old man Crawley's talk about metal seeds, my father's strange interest in rocks. The pieces were starting to slide toward each other, still awkward, but undeniable. When I got back, Ethan ran straight up to me. "They buzzed," he said, "just for a second, like they knew you were gone." I tried to brush it off, but chills prickled my arms. I took the wrapped ball to the barn and set it on the workbench. For a long time, I just stared at it, the silence pressing close. I tried simple tests. A magnet barely tugged at it, A hammer bounced off like I'd hit solid steel. I scratched it with a screwdriver. No mark. When I hooked it up to Dad's old multimeter, the readings jumped in ways I didn't understand. Numbers spiking, dropping, then leveling into a steady, almost rhythmic pulse. Like a heartbeat turned into current. I plugged in an old work lamp and tried feeding a weak connection through the ball. The bulb flickered to life, brighter than it had in years. "That's not possible," I whispered. The ball hummed gently, indifferent to my disbelief. "Whoa," Ethan said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. He stared at the bright lamp, then at the ball. "Is it a battery?" "Sort of," I said slowly, "but better than anything we've got." I unscrewed the bulb, suddenly aware that I was messing with something far beyond my knowledge. "We're not doing that again," I said. "Why not?" "Because we don't know what it is, or what it could do if we push it." Ethan frowned, but he nodded. I saw something new in his eyes, though, respect and a budding understanding of caution. That night, I called Crawley. He answered on the second ring, voice gravelly. "You opened it?" "No," I said, "but I tested one. It conducts power, like nothing I've seen." There was a pause. "Thought so," he murmured. "You need to be careful who finds out. You said they're valuable. They are, to the right people." "What does that mean?" "People who don't mind getting their hands dirty," he said. "Companies, collectors, folks who see your farm as a mine, not a home." I gripped the phone tighter. "So we pretend they don't exist?" "No," Crawley said. "You learn to use them before someone else does." For a few days, I did nothing except work the fields, fix fences, cook simple meals, pretend life was normal. But normal kept cracking. The balls would glow faintly whenever thunderstorms rolled in, pulsing in time with distant thunder. Maggie became even stranger, always roosting near where I'd hidden them, clucking contentedly as if guarding a nest. Ethan started drawing them in his school notebooks, circles with lines and stars inside. His teacher sent a note home. "Ethan seems preoccupied with spheres." I almost laughed. How could I explain to a stranger that my son's doodles might be worth millions? The breaking point came when I took one ball, just one, to a scrap dealer 3 towns away. I told myself it was just to get an idea, an estimate. I wrapped it tight, tucked it in a toolbox, and drove in the old truck, hands slick on the steering wheel. The dealer, a big man named Russo, didn't ask many questions. I set the ball on the counter and said, "Found this in one of my dad's sheds. Any idea what it is?" He tried to pick it up casually, and his face changed. The weight surprised him. The texture confused him. "How is it this heavy?" he muttered. He tapped it with a metal rod. Clear, clean resonance. No hollow echo. He tried scratching it, then swore under his breath when nothing marked. "This isn't anything I've seen," he said slowly. "Could be some kind of specialty alloy. Who'd your old man work for?" "He didn't," I lied. Russo's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'll give you $500 for it." My chest tightened. $500 for one ball. We had 7 more at home, and the silver one. That money alone could fix the roof, repair the truck, clear every overdue bill. But something in my gut twisted. Russo's eyes had changed. Curious, calculating. "You're offering that quickly for something you haven't seen before," I said. He smiled thinly. "Call it a hunch. Take it or leave it." I left it. I scooped up the ball and walked out before he could argue. As I reached the door, I heard him call, "If you find more, bring them by. We can talk bulk." Bulk. My grip tightened. If a simple scrap dealer smelled opportunity that quickly, what would a corporation do? A government? They'd tear the farm apart to get at the source. Back home, Ethan met me on the porch. "Did you sell one?" he asked, searching my face. "No," I said. "I changed my mind." Relief washed over his features in a way that surprised me. "Good," he murmured. "They feel ours." That word stuck with me. Ours. Not mine. Not Dad's. Ours. The farm, the sky, the impossible metal hearts humming under our floor. It all belonged to both of us now. And with belonging comes responsibility. I realized then that every decision I made about those balls would shape not just our present, but the kind of man my son grew into. I decided to open one, not the silver one. One of the gray ones. Late one night, after Ethan fell asleep, I went to the barn with a chisel, a clamp, and all the misplaced confidence of a desperate man. I secured the ball, took a deep breath, and tapped the chisel against a groove. Nothing. I hit harder. Still nothing. I struck with everything I had, anger and fear and hope in every blow. The chisel snapped. The ball didn't even flinch. I sank onto a hay bale, gasping. "What are you?" I whispered. The ball answered with a soft, steady hum. As I sat there, Maggie hopped onto the workbench. She pecked at the silver ball, which I'd laid nearby without thinking. The moment her beak touched it, the silver surface cracked. A hairline fracture split across it with a tiny, crystalline sound. I froze. Very slowly, I picked it up. The crack widened under my fingers, not with force, but with heat. The ball grew warmer, glowing softly. The shell split, and inside was light. Not empty light, not flare and gone, but light trapped in a crystal lattice, shifting colors like an oil slick. It didn't just shine. It radiated. I almost dropped it. Every instinct screamed, "This is wrong," while another, quieter voice whispered, "This is what you've been waiting for." The crystal pulsed in my hands, casting faint reflections across the barn. When I brought one of the gray balls close, it responded. Its hum grew louder, matching the rhythm of the crystal. They were connected, shell and core, battery and heart, and somehow my old hen was digging them out of the ground for us. "Dad?" Ethan's voice floated from the doorway. I turned, heart in my throat. He stared at the glowing crystal. "Is it alive?" "Get back," I said, more sharply than I meant. He stopped, hurt flickering over his features. I softened my voice. "I don't know what it is yet." He nodded slowly. "But it's ours, right?" There was that word again. Ours. I wrapped the crystal in cloth, feeling its warmth through the fabric, and took him back to the house. That night, I didn't hide it in a drawer. I put it in the center of the kitchen table. If something was going to change our lives, I wanted to look it in the eye while it did. The next morning, Crawley showed up unannounced, leaning on his walking stick. "You felt it, didn't you?" he said without greeting. "Felt what?" "The shift." His eyes landed on the crystal on the table. He inhaled sharply. "Oh," he whispered. "You opened one." I nodded. "What are they?" He sat down slowly. "There's a vein under your land, a seam of material that shouldn't exist on this planet. People have theories. Alien, divine, natural freak. Doesn't matter. It's powerful and extremely rare. Your hen, she's digging out loose fragments through whatever strange path nature chose. Can it make us rich? I asked bluntly. Crawley didn't flinch. Yes. If you tell the right people, you'll never worry about money again. Ethan's eyes shone. We could fix everything, he said. The house, the truck, maybe even help other people. Crawley's gaze hardened. But once word gets out, this place will never be yours again. Men in suits will come with contracts and smiles. Others might come without smiles, and they won't see you as owners, just obstacles. I looked at my son, at the crystal, at the tired house around us. Somewhere between fear and hope, a choice began to form. For the first time since moving to the farm, I felt the future pressing down on me like a weight, but not the crushing kind, the kind you have to lift carefully, piece by piece, before it becomes something useful. The crystal sat in the center of the kitchen table, glowing faintly like a captured star. Ethan watched it with awe. Crawley watched it with fear. And I watched it with everything mixed together: hope, dread, greed, responsibility. So what now? I asked. Crawley sighed. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, the creak of the old house, the wind brushing the windows, Maggie clucking in the coop, felt amplified. I kept imagining strangers showing up, men with sharp eyes and sharper intentions. The crystal hummed faintly, as if in thought. At one point, around 3 a.m., Ethan wandered out, rubbing his eyes. "Are we in trouble?" he whispered. "Not yet," I said, "but we might be." He nodded in that small, brave way kids do when they trust someone without needing details. "We'll be okay," he said. "We have each other." That nearly undid me. Morning brought clarity, or maybe desperation masquerading as clarity. I went to the barn, lifted one of the gray balls, and set it next to the open crystal. The two pulsed in perfect rhythm. Then, on instinct, I took a length of copper wiring and wrapped it around the gray shell, connecting it to a small inverter salvaged from my father's tools. When I switched it on, the inverter hummed to life instantly. No sputter, no delay, a clean surge of power, enough to light half the farm if scaled up. My knees nearly buckled. We stood on a gold mine. I carried the setup back to the house and switched our failing generator line into the inverter's output. The kitchen lights flickered, then steadied, brighter than they'd been in years. Ethan gasped, cheering. Lights meant warmth, stability, life. I felt something bloom in my chest, painful and proud. I turned to Crawley. "What if we don't sell the core?" I asked. "What if we use it?" Crawley blinked. "Use it?" "Power the farm, grow enough crops to sell, build something sustainable." His mouth twitched. "You want a farm with alien batteries?" "I want to survive," I said quietly, "without losing everything." But good things shine bright enough to draw shadows, and trouble came faster than I expected. 2 days after we powered the house, a white SUV stopped at the edge of our long dirt road. Not a neighbor, not a delivery, not a friend. A stranger in a black coat stepped out, scanned the property with too much interest, then left. I tried to tell myself it meant nothing. But that night, I found footprints near the barn, large, fresh, circling where the balls were hidden. My stomach twisted. Someone had come looking. They'd be back. I doubled the locks, moved the balls under the floorboards in a sealed metal chest, kept the crystal in a locked drawer in the kitchen. Maggie slept inside now. Her presence calmed the spheres somehow, as if she were connected to them in ways no scientist would ever believe. Ethan sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "Are we in danger now?" he asked again. I knelt beside him. "People might want what we have," I said, "but that doesn't mean they can take it." He studied me carefully. "You won't let them." It wasn't a question. It was a promise I had to keep. The next morning, I went to town for supplies. At the hardware store, I noticed the same white SUV parked near the gas station. A man pretended to read a newspaper inside, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. the way his eyes flicked toward me through the reflection of the glass door. I bought nails, lumber, and a heavy-duty padlock. On my way out, I walked right past the SUV. The man lowered his paper and smiled thinly. "Morning," he said. "Nice farm you got." My pulse stopped. "Don't know what you're talking about," I muttered. His smile widened. "Not yet." I drove home fast, every bump in the road rattling my nerves. I checked on Ethan first. He was feeding Maggie, humming. Safe, thank God. Then I went to the barn. Everything was untouched, but the feeling lingered, like storm clouds gathering on all horizons. Crawley arrived just before sunset, sweat beading on his wrinkled forehead. "Men asking questions," he said without preamble. "Town's buzzing. Someone said your lights were too bright last night. They're curious." I cursed under my breath. "What do I do?" Crawley took a long breath. "You get ahead of them, before curiosity becomes greed." That night, after Ethan slept, Crawley and I sat at the kitchen table staring at the glowing crystal. "You need a cover story," he said, "and distance. If they think you're hiding something, they'll come harder. So what? Pretend it's solar energy? You don't have solar." I clenched my jaw. "Then what?" Crawley leaned forward. "The truth, but only the part that protects you. You found old mineral deposits. Nothing special. Enough to explain noise, light, anything suspicious." "And when they ask to see them?" I asked. Crawley looked away. "Then we pray they lose interest." But greed never loses interest. Not when it catches a scent. The very next morning, the white SUV pulled up our driveway. A man in a black coat stepped out, sunglasses reflecting the entire property. He didn't bother with courtesy. "You Mark Halston?" "Who's asking?" He stepped closer, flashing a badge from some private mineral research firm I'd never heard of. "We're conducting surveys in the region. Neighbors said you had some unusual geological activity here." "Neighbors exaggerate," I said. He smiled like a shark. "Mind if we take a look around?" "Yes," I said simply. His smile tightened. "You refusing access?" "I am." He studied me with predatory calm. "We can come back with paperwork." "Do that," I said. "And I'll be here with a lawyer." A bluff. I didn't have a lawyer, but the man paused, recalculating. Behind me, Ethan stepped onto the porch, small and curious. The man's eyes flicked toward him. Something territorial and primal surged through me. "We're done," I said, stepping between them. "Get off my land." The man raised both hands. "Fair enough," he said. Then he turned, walked to his SUV, and whispered something into his radio before driving away. I didn't wait for reinforcements. Within the hour, I packed our essentials, the crystal, the balls, food, clothes, and loaded them into the truck. "Dad, are we leaving again?" Ethan asked, fear creeping into his voice. That cut deeper than any threat. Running had been our whole life before this farm. I crouched down to meet his eyes. "No," I said firmly. "We're not running. We're protecting what's ours." He nodded slowly, understanding more than a child should. "What do we do?" "We hide the important things," I said, "and we make this place safe." The hiding part was easy. My father had built a root cellar decades ago, deep beneath the barn. The hatch was buried under old hay bales. I carried the metal chest down into the cool darkness, then placed the glowing crystal atop it. The air vibrated softly, like a giant creature breathing underground. Ethan followed me with a flashlight. "Feels like a spaceship," he whispered. He wasn't wrong. I sealed the hatch, covered it, and reinforced the barn door with heavy timber. If someone wanted those spheres, they'd have to tear the farm apart plank by plank. and I was ready to fight. But violence didn't arrive. Something stranger did. That night, the crystal pulsed so brightly beneath the floor that bluish light seeped through the cracks. Maggie paced circles above the hatch, clucking with intensity, almost urgency. I lifted her gently. "What is it, girl?" The ground hummed. I felt it through my boots. Ethan stepped out of the house, eyes wide. "Dad." "The fields." We walked outside. The grass shimmered faintly under the moonlight, like dew made of silver. For a moment, everything felt alive, charged, breathing. Not dangerous, not hostile, just awakening. We stood there in silence as the humming faded. The fields settled back into their gentle night swaying. "Did we do that?" Ethan whispered. "I think the land did it," I said, "because of what's underneath." "Is it a good thing?" he asked. I didn't know, but looking at him, at our home, at the land pulsing with newfound life, I said, "I think it can be." And for the first time, fear loosened its grip. Maybe this wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a gift. A strange one, yes, but a gift nonetheless. The next morning, the man in the black coat returned, but not all the way up the drive. He stopped at the road, observing, waiting. I didn't confront him. I didn't need to. Something had shifted. The land hummed with a quiet warning, a boundary drawn not by fences but by power. Eventually he left, perhaps sensing that whatever was here wouldn't be easy, physically or legally, to pry away. Crawley arrived that afternoon. "Word is spreading," he said, "but slowly. The storm's passing. For now," I said. "Storms always return." Crawley nodded. "Then be ready, but don't live in fear." And so we rebuilt our lives, not with running, but with roots. The crystal powered the entire farm. The light stayed bright, the appliances steady, the winters warm. Our crops grew faster, greener, healthier than they ever had. Word spread that our vegetables were the freshest in the county. People came to buy them, curious at first, then loyal. Ethan helped me build a greenhouse, his laughter echoing across the fields like birdsong. We didn't mention the source of our miracle. Some things weren't meant for the world. Some things belonged only to those who listened to the land. The money came slowly at first, then steadily. Enough to fix the house, then expand the farm, then put extra aside. Enough to give Ethan what I never had, a secure home, a future. People called us lucky. I let them. No one needed to know that our luck glowed beneath the barn floor. Maggie continued laying strange spheres occasionally, each new one added to the chest. We didn't sell them. Not a single one. Wealth wasn't worth losing what we'd found. Safety, purpose, peace. The real miracle wasn't the metal. It was the life we built around it. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Ethan and I sat on the porch. "Dad," he said softly, "do you think the balls will ever stop coming?" I shrugged gently. Maybe, maybe not. "And if they do?" I looked out at the fields, green, alive, thriving from our hands. "Then we'll still have this," I said. "Everything we built." He leaned his head against my shoulder. "I'm glad we stayed," he murmured. "Me too," I whispered. "More than you know." And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about survival. I was thinking about tomorrow. When the stars rose, faint and scattered, the fields shimmered again, just subtly, like a secret wink from the land itself. The crystal pulsed gently beneath us, steady as a quiet heart. The farm wasn't haunted anymore. It was healed. So were we. I wrapped an arm around my son, breathing in the scent of earth and fresh grass. Every morning Maggie brought me strange little balls, I said softly. I thought they were trouble. But they weren't, Ethan said. I smiled. No, they brought us everything we needed. And in the warm stillness of that night, we finally felt rich.